Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to have Anju with us today. She's new to my network, but I'm always looking to speak to chief people officers and how they come at this topic of respect. So, Anju, welcome. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you, Bobby. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name's Anju Choudhary. I've spent about 2 decades working in people, culture, and leadership roles across global organizations, supporting leaders, especially teams and systems that are going through major change, digital transformation, complexity, etc. That's my sweet spot. What shaped my perspective about how respect or lack of it shows up in everyday moments at work, which we're going to discuss, and not in policies and values and statements, is how decisions are made, how feedback is given, moments that truly matter, and how people experience power and voice on day to day. So I'm really excited to part of this conversation today, Bobby, because I believe respect is considered a soft topic, but I think foundationally, it's a leadership capability. I know one of your previous guests on the podcast spoke about it being a skill that people need to polish and brush up and really enhance. So when respect is present, people thrive. And when it's missing, even the best of the talent and strategies struggle to succeed. So, what a
Oh,
great topic.
and wonderful opening. Thank you, Anju. You've just hit on such key points. Thank you for watching previous interviews. And by the way, for the audience, we didn't do any prep for this. I never guide my guests on any particular direction to go in, but you've hit on the most critical. And the one I will just spell out again is this notion that a lot of my guests speak about, especially CHROs, chief people officers, that it's not a soft skill. Respect is very much a hard skill and it's a leadership competency. So thank you for that. But please go ahead and go a little deeper on how you define respect in the workplace.
I'll try. Because it's so complex. It seems so simple, but it's so complex. So I feel like respect at work is how people are treated when it matters the most. Like we discussed, moments that matter, especially moments of disagreement, pressure, and decision making. It's reflected on how power is used, especially by the people who hold the power, how there is transparency in decisions are made or lack of again. Or while people feel they're heard, we've heard this before, people want to be seen, heard, and respected. So, what does that truly mean? So, respect isn't about avoiding a very charged topic or avoiding conflicts or being polite. It's about fairness, clarity, and consistency. And at this core, the respect means acknowledging people's dignity, their efforts, voice, regardless of what the role is or what the title is. So it's not about being agreeable. We often misunderstand respect as being agreeable, but it's about being fair. You can be polite, but still be disrespectful. And I've seen that happen sometimes. And respect is how people, especially leaders, use power when no one is watching. We teach our kids, how do you need to behave when no one is watching? Same goes for the leaders too, especially when nobody is watching. How do you treat people? And then there is a big misunderstanding in terms of harmony or being agreeable, being respect at workplace. But real respect is much deeper than that. One time we were actually having a conversation around performance feedback. And one of the manager reached out to me and they're like, okay, this team member of mine have been away from work due to maternity. And I feel hesitant to provide this feedback. And I got curious on what caused that. And I realized there was a dip in performance even before the person went on maternity, but they were doing something which I didn't have a word for then, but I know is called protective hesitation. They felt they're going to offend them by providing that clear feedback. Actually, the reverse. When we have clear, honest conversations, you actually being more respectful because you allow people to change, do something about it, and that feedback is really valuable. So, in short, it shows up on everyday matters, how we listen, how we provide feedback, how conflict is handled. And when people feel safe, psychological safety is such a crucial ingredient in the area of feeling respected without the fear of consequence. I feel respect is also not necessarily on a same lens. The aperture changes based on your race, culture, where you come from. Just take an example. In my culture, for example, I probably draw a boundary on how close somebody would come if they're strangers. It could be different in different cultures. And we all need to learn a little bit more about create that learning space bigger to understand what different cultures, how do different cultures define trust and respect.
Yeah, so rich, Anju. Thank you. And I think we both share being Indian. And yeah, I think that sensitivity about our spaciousness, not just in person, actually, these days, with most of our work being virtual, even how we show up on a call like this on Zoom is so important, right? To really show up with respect and spaciousness. The other thing that's coming up as you're speaking, especially around performance and feedback and those critical conversations, I just want to highlight and done it many times with, how I teach the respect quotient, which is the framework behind their leading with respect. But just a quick primer on why it's such a critical tool, I believe, to go deeper. Because I think in our most organizations have action bias, right? Let's just make quick decisions. Let's make that quick, short, summary. Everything needs to be an elevator pitch and Twitter, soundbite. Some conversations are not like that. And that's why I built this framework. And I won't go through all the letters, but basically it's when there are two people, it could be a direct report and a manager. Actually, that one's very interesting. Now, let me stay with that one, Anju, and get your perspective on it. So I'm sure, you use SBI, right? We all in HR use situation behavior impact as a classic framework, but I love what you're saying about power differential. To me, what's inherent in SBI is a power differential. It's usually somebody in power, a manager, giving feedback to their direct report or somebody not at their same peer level. That's why I believe the respect quotient is really important, because it's a forcing function to slow us down, give us the chance to truly speak our perspective. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but at least hear. So the RES steps, recognize, empathize, and spaciousness, are about each individual gets to do that with questions of inquiry to go deep on, of course, the opening point is the situation, right? It's not just abstract. Back to your point about that aha with the person on maternity leave. And, that's a wonderful example. And then when both parties have done the RES, then we pause, check for clarification, or hopefully aha is like, oh my goodness, I'd never thought of it that way, right? Because when you really take the time to listen, and yeah, before I go to the rest, the spaciousness is so important, right? That we need to realize some things are not a quick conversation. It's a walk in the park, it's an offsite, it's a meal, it's spaciousness, right? So then the PECT is assuming that both parties can now find one action. Doesn't have to be more, can be just one action where they're going to go into turning this around. And actually, somebody the other day just said, one of the guests said that to pick that up even more, imagine if that action is something that you're doing for the other. It's not what's in it for me. Let's say it's you and me, and I sign up for doing something that's going to better your team, your effort, your initiative, and you do the same for me on mine. That becomes that truly generative, transformative culture. So thank you for hearing that out. But I'd love your thoughts on that as it relates to what you opened so beautifully around power differential and feedback in particular. Let's get your take on that.
I love that framework. And I feel like it gives a structure to people. I'm going to start with a failure story and come back to it because feedback's so close to my heart, Bobby. We did not grow up learning how to provide feedback effectively. And hence, people just are taken aback as soon as you hear the word feedback, because it does not associate it with good feeling. I've not seen a person who says, I want to provide feedback or receive feedback and then go back happy after. For some reason, that's how it's ended up. Because the reason is we didn't learn it in the past. We go back to our old behaviors, no matter how many trainings we do. And I've realized over a period of time that consistently we'll have to train ourselves, that it changes the behavior. And hence we learn these. So the frameworks fit beautifully because you can remind yourself. One other thing that I'd encourage people to do, and during my time at Skillsoft, I was actually very lucky because AI just come up and we wanted to figure out what is a one way that behavior shift happens soon and learning doesn't become this episodic one time moment thing that we can truly utilize to change those behaviors that we expect to see in people. So my failure story, when I first moved to US, before that I've been driving for many years, one, DMVs are scary to me for some reason, but I was pretty confident. I'd practice. I used to drive. I was driving on my international license for about 6 months before I went in for that DMV test. As soon as I get out the parking lot, I could drive only for 3 seconds and I had a critical error. And the reason for that was my driving experience was actually from India. So I drove on the wrong side as soon as I got out. My mind told me something's not quite right, but I couldn't figure out what that was. In a high tension scenario, we do go back to our previous learned behavior. And that's what happens in providing feedback, crucial conversations, whether that's with customers in negotiating, whether that's employee and manager situation. So the support that I encourage people to look for is practice. Practice and get real-time feedback. Now you have support of AI coaches that allow you to refine it, get real-time feedback, identify where those gaps lie, and actually improve on those. So I think that is a great way also to sensitize yourself in the areas. Like the Johari window, we don't know what we don't know, and hence have an opportunity. And as much as human coaches are great, I'm one of the certified coaches myself, and I feel like one, technology is easily available and accessible. Number two, you can be your vulnerable self. I feel like sometimes you're not able to open to a human coach as much. So please feel free to use it, practice it as much as possible, because you'll be able to really get the crux of where do I fail? What happens? What is the point that I'm missing? And then another thing that I want to mention is respect actually is not a perk, it's a foundation. So something so critical that is core of your business. That's how you lead people. And if it's so important, then I think it's worth our time to spend to learn that skill.
Oh, wonderful. I love that example. And, just that again, that pause to recognize when we're going by forced behavior, memory. And yes, I too am a big fan of AI, and I think it's doing a remarkable things for both L&D and coaching with discernment, right? I mean, I wrote a post about, I think it was McKinsey, that showed that the top application is actually people that are interacting with AI as a therapist. So there's part of me that feels sad about that. It's like, the human to human connection. I mean, since COVID, I think we've just become so insular that we don't have that trusted friend or partner that we can just have a conversation with. But yeah, in a coaching environment, I absolutely agree. I think it's a great sounding board to check, and with the one caution that the ultimate discerning happens by the human, right? Because
Absolutely.
we've all had those experiences of telling our GPT or Claude or Copilot or whatever you use that, nope, you got that wrong. And they always admit like, yep, you're right, I got it wrong. So let's not get lazy. And that's a separate topic, by the way, I will plan to see for that I'm very passionate about right now is AI workflow,
Mhm.
right? And that Better Up and Stanford Media Lab has done some great research on it to find, my paraphrasing is basically when people do copy paste from ChatGPT without really putting some human sense into it.
Yeah.
There's a huge cost on productivity when managers have to do the rework and get feedback about, sloppy work. Because I think we all agree every business, every leader wants excellence, not perfection, but excellence in the work we do. Great, Anju. So I think we're in a good place. Let's get your top tips that you can teach everyone how to have more respect in the workplace.
Again, not sure if I got this all covered, but I will give my best to try. I think clarity over comfort, which means setting clear expectation and honest feedback act as a driver for respect, even when it's uncomfortable to provide that conversation. In my previous example with the manager, it's more comfortable. I don't say anything because it's easier and I don't offend them. But you're actually doing a disservice to that person. Closing the loop, listening and being present while we're listening. Right now in this conversation, if you're doing something on the side, listening completely and then closing the loop. How many times I've seen leaders not respecting people because something gets dropped, something that they made commitment towards, and it does not get either acknowledged, but if it did get acknowledged, it did not get completed, or if it did get completed, there's no information. So close the loop. And then model respect under pressure. Another example that I just shared about my driving DMV experience, under pressure is when we truly show what matters. So if you're going through a huge change management process, anything big happening in the company, how do you show under pressure? A quick example from a company that I work for who did it beautifully, even after COVID, when we had to let go of people, we actually taught our leaders to see their people to the garden gate. And what I mean by that is there are times when we'll have to let go of people. We can still do that respectfully. Our talent acquisition team wore a hat of a coach and help people transition to different jobs. So we were present, even though we could not contain that workforce within that company and we had to let go, but you still can do that respectfully. So that would be my suggestion.
Absolutely magnificent. Yeah, those are such solid ones. And I love the blend of how you just kept it very real and where really the rubber meets the road, in terms of how business and people operate together. So, Anju, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights.
Thank you, Bobby, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.